It's been a pretty tough year in 2020. We've gotten a lot of things improved, things are coming back slowly, coming back to life, but there's much more to be done. I think that a post-COVID campus culture can not only be better than what it was, but we can also improve on things like diversity, like sustainability, like giving more funding to every single club that needs it. I've got the skills, I've got the experience, I think I've got the vision. I love this campus and I want to help it. I'm a New Zealander, so legally I cannot be in any Australian political party, but I am a member of the on-campus Liberal Club. I have campaigned for Benjamin Hinds last year for the USU, and I suppose non-uni Stu Paul related, I have campaigned as a member of a Souls ticket last year. Sensible centrist. I think yes, in the sense that I don't think it should stay neutral on the issues that really matter to students. So as a board director, I would like to see advocacy for things like education cuts, but no, in the sense that as much as advocacy on certain issues is a good thing, I don't consider it to be a good thing for a board director to have every single decision being handed down to them by their faction superiors or by their ideology on their campus faction. I think really it's really important for a board director to not be limited by that narrow scope of ideology or stupor interest, and really look at the decisions they're making and say, what is this going to do in terms of its impact on students, on the organisation, on campus? No, not at this moment. But look, obviously I haven't spoken to everyone in quite as much detail as I have others. I bloody love Joe Fiddler. I think I read his profile, I had a massive laugh. It's a fantastic campaign, and I'm sure the guy would tell you guys himself that it's a joke campaign, and if it actually gets elected, I guess, if I had to name a person, it would be him. It will be a part of my fiduciary duty as a board director to, when it comes to voting for a president, to really hear every single one of the candidates out. So I would caveat the rest of my answer with the fact that I can't give you a definite answer. With that being said, I don't think it's any secret that I am quite good mates with Benjamin Hinds, but not only that, above the personal connection, I think he's a great guy, he's very switched on. From what I've seen, his work on the board this year has been very competent, and I wouldn't mind seeing him in the big chair. Especially given the very difficult circumstances they're being thrown in, I think they've made a lot of good attempts at reform. I don't, for instance, like I said before, 100% agree with the new funding model, but they at least acknowledge that there was a problem with the old funding model and really got to work. Or things like shout out Ruby Lots for restoration of the $6 garlic and cheese pizza. But also I think overall they've been competent, they've been around, they've done a good job. I would say the one area where I would, as a board director, want to see myself do better than them is the level of cooperation, communication and coordination with not only clubs and society executives, but also everyday students. Especially when you've got all these COVID guidelines that are floating around, drastic changes every minute. It's really important for clubs execs, but also students, to really stay on top of what the USU is doing. I would communicate a lot more, I would talk to people a lot more, I would try and cooperate a lot more. I mean, look, I think it's the clubs and societies, and that is quite literally what makes USU. Without it, it would be a completely different university. The overall approach is go big or go home. So that comes through in things like the funding model, where I think it's really important for the USU just to commit as much of its resources as possible to giving societies the money, but also things like keep on doing what we're doing with reviving Manning Bar. Herman's, I've been there a couple of times this year, it looks pretty good. Do more things there. I think the key here is just not to be complacent and just continue doing new initiatives, even if they may not be as successful or they cost a little bit more. People have promised the whole, we're gonna return off-campus alcohol subsidy policy for ages. That hasn't happened. I think that's a really easy fix that gets people to go to more social events because the alcohol is subsidized. Or things like, obviously with the new funding model, smaller clubs have benefited because they're getting more money, but of course we've heard things from, say, the engineers or the art society or the business society who've gone, well, we're bigger societies that are used to getting a bigger cut of the pie, now we're not getting that. I think there is a middle of the road solution to that. I think you can have a better funding model. No model is perfect, and I acknowledge that while I think I've got a pretty good solution, it may not work out as well as I would like it to in reality, and that goes for everyone. But the key here is I would try to talk to the execs as much as possible. So I would propose, I guess, a sort of dual track model where if you're a club that benefits a little bit more from getting a grant, for applying for a one-off grant, you get to do that. Say you're a smaller club that don't get as many attendees and you want to sort of create a positive cycle where you get more money to do events so that you can attract more people, you can apply for a grant. But if you're a big club that already have a lot of people coming in and you're sure about that revenue stream, you can also apply for that. It's not about just giving a whole heap more money to everyone in total, it's about maximizing, or rather optimizing, the distribution of the money. But also things like, look, it's pretty tough for clubs and societies to apply for stuff like revenues before this funding model, to apply for things like subsidies. I've been on the executive of a small to medium-sized society, the Kiwi Student Society. I can tell you it is bloody tough to figure out how to get those forms done after an event. So also about improving things like that. I wouldn't say it's so much a transparency issue as it is a communication issue. I acknowledge there are some things when the board goes in camera that it, being bound by law and fiduciary duties, simply cannot reveal. I accept that, but I think it's just about when it comes to a decision about certain things, explaining why, for instance, they've done their COVID guidelines in a certain way and communicating that clearly to all the stakeholders involved. It would depend on the, I can't give you a general answer, it'd have to be case by case. How much is the interest of disclosure to the student body in terms of democracy and the will of the student electorate versus the damage it could cause to the USU board. For instance, if they're discussing internal matters that relate to, for instance, the hiring process of a CEO, that's private information, that's something that board directors should be able to discuss in confidence. Absolutely. I guess if something legitimately illegal was being discussed, then yeah, but to the extent that no such thing occurs, then no, I wouldn't be willing to breach my fiduciary duty. I mean, it's always good to have a rainy day fund, I guess, but I don't really buy the idea of having a bigger surplus means your organisation is doing well. Fundamentally, we're a non-for-profit organisation. Our role should be, like I said, go big or go home, especially in these trying times. I think you're right. Break even or as much as possible. Look, it's a very tough situation. I assume they made that decision in a context where they just legitimately could not pay the staff for those hours. If that was the situation, then yes, I would have been open to that. To my knowledge, there hasn't been an instance where, and I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, an instance where, say, a DSP has shut down the publication of certain parts of an article in one article because they didn't think it was relevant or they should be published. As far as I'm aware, the DSP's role is to essentially make sure there's nothing defamatory in the publications. So to the extent that they've only been doing that, then I don't see a problem with their influence over the publication. So I went for about 20 minutes. So I didn't really get to hear the part where I think people complained about the DJ not playing Mr. Brightside or whatever, or how like they got DJs from the student society. So I can't give you a full review, unfortunately, but from what I'd see, I was just very happy that there was a bit of student culture back on campus. I was very happy that there was a party in Manning to begin with. Not perfect, but just the beginning. I want to see more of it.
C'est à toi de jouer et de savoir me plaire. Je ne dis pas qu'un jour il ne puisse se faire.